What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I am hyped after seeing the X-Men teaser for Avengers Doomsday. That movie's gonna be so amazing. So we have to cover the story. Son. We gotta cover the story where Doctor Doom kills Wolverine and the Avengers, because it's not just Wolverine. Iron Man, Thor, the Incredible Hulk, all these guys die. So what this story does is it picks up in a place called Sagittarian Ranch, and initially it's Doctor Doom on the hunt for Skrulls. No, he's not killing Skrull versions of the superheroes. And so what he says is, my search for the Skrull warriors has led me to the most unexpected of places. My prey hides in the open at Sagittarian Ranch. I had learned all I could from the weak Skrull I had detained. Then I let the Star-Spangled Dullard, Captain America, find fresh test subjects for me. And when he shows up, he just kind of like declares to what looks like nobody at all, right? I am Doom. I seek only the maroon Skrulls. You don't want them within your borders. Give me the wretches and I shall depart at once. Now, of course, he is talking to Captain America, but let's be honest with ourselves. Dr. Doom is the guy who would like travel to a location, right? Just an empty, desolate place for whatever reason. He would arrive and he would just say, I am Doom. Right? He would just do that, right? Just declare the fact that he has arrived there. He's not talking to anybody. He's just saying that he's there. Doom is exactly that kind of guy. And that's where Captain America says, America was built by welcoming the wretched. And so in turn, Doom just kind of thinks about this and he says, listening to this moron always gives me a headache. And so in response to Captain America's statement, Dr. Doom says, then you will die alone in this cow pasture. And that's where Captain America tells him, you've made a mistake. I am not alone. Now, here's the thing to know here, right? A little bit of context for what's going on, because I imagine some of you guys are just kind of like, okay, so what's happening here? Basically, Dr. Doom is on the hunt for Cadre K. I always like calling them Cadre K. What's Cadre K? Cadre K was a team that was introduced by Marvel Comics in the year 2000 in the Maximum Security storyline written by Kurt Busiek. The idea, most of you guys know the Skrulls, right? They kind of exist out there. You have regular Skrulls who can shapeshift, and then you have what are called deviant Skrulls, basically Skrulls with a mutant gene. Cadre K are what basically remains of deviant Skrulls that did not become dire wraiths. And the idea behind this is that they basically follow the teachings of Charles Xavier, mostly because of the fact that it was Charles Xavier who had assembled Cadre K in order to save them from being executed by the rest of the Skrull race. And so the idea was that Cadre K would help Charles Xavier essentially go to war, or at least deal with the Skrull threat as it existed in relation to Earth. But Cadre K are Skrulls that have mutant powers, and so Dr. Doom was looking to attain them for his own ends. Ultimately, the Avengers and the X-Men figured out what was going on, and they rescued Cadre K. One, because Dr. Doom's a threat, and two, because Cadre K are mutants, and mutants are always on the lookout for anybody else out there that has a mutant gene. So, focusing on what's happening now, right? The Avengers show up here, they confront Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom literally says, I have treated you simpletons with velvet gloves for far too long. Tonight, you feel the full strength of Doom's iron gauntlets. You guys know what this means. Y'all know what's going on next, man. You guys know that what's about to follow is one of the most spectacular ass whoopings that you are ever going to see in Marvel Comics, because what happens? Janet Van Dyne steps up. Dr. Doom says, you want some, I'll give you some, son. Iron Man steps up. He says, you want some, I'll give you some too, son. He overloads Iron Man's armor to 4,700%. So much so, life support shuts down, and Dr. Doom incinerates Tony Stark in his own suit. He kills the man in his own armor. It's like busting into a guy's house and shooting him with his own gun, right? Next up comes the Incredible Hulk. Dr. Doom says, man, son, you better come strong. Boy, the Incredible Hulk throws a punch and Dr. Doom's like, nope, not a chance. He blocks his punch and just says, no, you imbecilic giant. Doom is the strongest one there is, and breaks his arm. And so at that point, Hulk just says, Banner, help. He asked Bruce Banner for help. And so Banner ends up manifesting and just says, wait. And Dr. Doom just says, not a terrible idea. I think I shall help Banner, and stomps on his head and crushes his skull, right? Freeing him once and for all. And then Wolverine steps up, right? He says, I'm the best there is at what I do. And what I do, Dr. Doom cuts him off mid-sentence. He's like, look, man, I don't have time for any of this nonsense, man. Dr. Doom says, come feel me. And he literally kills Wolverine on the spot. Why? He says, I think I shall cut this animal's vocal cords and spinal cord. An adamantium skeleton cannot protect between your vertebrae. He cuts this dude's head clean off. Thor steps up thinking this man stands a chance, right? He just says, tonight you dine with Hela. And dude's like, I think not. And takes Thor's hammer away from him. He snatches the hammer away from him, right? And then just clocks him with his own hammer. And where Thor's just like Odin's blood, right? Just totally flabbergasted. Dr. Doom says, not Odin, Doom. And Doom defies the gods. One of the coldest lines that I've ever heard. In that moment, he's just like, wait, this is beyond even Doom. Because your suspicions are true. It's an illusion. Clickbait. Marvel clickbait the hell out of us. Watch the viewership on this video drop to nothing after this, man. The retention vanishes. People start clicking off, right? Like, this is one of the crazy things. In this moment, Doom realizes none of that happened. Right? It's an illusion that was put in his head by Zakan, a member of Cadre K. Literally using telepathy, they tricked Dr. Doom into thinking that he destroyed all the Avengers. And that's where you start to realize him wielding Thor's hammer, that was the illusion that broke it, right? That no one can wield Thor's hammer if they're unworthy. Now, Thor's hammer, as we know, says, whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. It doesn't say, whosoever holds this hammer, if they be a good guy, shall possess the power of Thor. It doesn't say that. Right? And don't trick yourself into thinking that only good guys can lift the hammer and be worthy. Secret Empire is an example of that. Hydra Cat picking up the hammer and dominating the entirety of the battlefield. That was amazing. Holy hell. It was like one of the greatest moments ever in the entirety of Marvel Comics. Son, dude, I'm sorry, I'm getting so excited, people. It's a really exciting point in Marvel Comics, and I love that story. Anyway, focusing on the here and now, enough sidetracking. Captain America literally just tells Zakan, you did great. You bought us a lot of time. Dr. Doom's pissed. Right? He's like, what is going on here? Only to find out that while he was momentarily distracted with Zakan's telepathy, they slapped a micro EMP onto his suit and shut his armor down. Apparently, Captain America had it developed to use on Iron Man back during Civil War, which is kind of a crazy revelation that Steve Rogers was plotting ways to take out Tony Stark. Lest we forget, right, in Punisher versus the Marvel Universe, we saw what happens. Not Punisher kills the Marvel Universe, but Punisher versus the Marvel Universe, we saw what happens when Iron Man's suit shuts down while he's in it. It turns into a tomb. Right? You remember that line from the comic? It was 5 days before the screaming stopped. He literally died inside of his own suit. It's absolutely crazy. But the crazy thing here, right? Captain America tells him, right? Ant-Man examined the nanobots that you deployed. They were synthetic organic material made from Skrull. So now we have an indication of what Dr. Doom is doing by trying to snatch up Cadre K. And he says, you had an ordinary Skrull, but you wanted Skrull warriors to study. And that's where Dr. Doom asks, where's the mutant, right? And the response of Captain America, Cyclops, by now, he's halfway through attacking your lab, ransacking the joint, and knocking it back to the Stone Age. Now imagine you're Dr. Doom, right? Let's just put yourself in Dr. Doom's shoes here, right? Probably the greatest thing you're ever going to experience in your life. Being able to imagine that you're Dr. Doom, right? Enjoy this moment. This is the best life gets. And so as you're laying here with your suit shut down after having been tricked into believing that you killed the Avengers, and you're told that a whole host of X-Men have invaded your home, they're ransacking your house and destroying everything. How pissed off are you going to be? Son, Dr. Doom, let me tell you something, man. When Dr. Doom gets pissed, he gets pissed. Woe betide the poor soul that incurs the wrath of Victor Von Doom. Because in that moment, he's just like, no. And that's when you switch over to Dr. Doom's place. And Captain America just says, give me a sit rep, Summers. And Cyclops just says, it's all going according to plan, Captain America. We're scorching the Latvian Earth. With Doom gone, his robotic forces are not giving us much resistance. We were right, though. He's been engineering shape-shifting robots. Right? And that's where Scott Lang is just like, I took care of Doom's backup data. That just leaves whatever is in this vault. Now, it's a smart strategy of Dr. Doom. The inherent ability of pretty much every Skrull Skrull that was not wiped out is the ability to shapeshift, right? All Skrulls have that ability, at least all surviving Skrulls, whether they're dire wraiths or they are deviant Skrulls or just traditional Skrulls, right? Whatever the case is, whether they're Skrulls with mutant genes or the traditional Skrulls as we know them now, which are basically deviant Skrulls, right? Whatever the case happens to be, they can all shapeshift. Dr. Doom taking that ability and then applying it to Doombots presents a whole new scenario, because as we know from like the Secret Invasion, Super Skrull, and so on, it's not simply just shapeshifting, it's also copying powers. And that's the crazy thing, because in that moment when the vault is open, this just crazy looking Skrull comes walking out and just asks, "Father?" and then immediately sees Cadre K and is like, "You are not father." And at that point, Captain America's like, "What's going on?" Right? And Scott Lang's just like, "Stand by, Cap. Doom has a new prototype." And so in that moment, you switch back to Captain America and Zakan from Cadre K. And Dr. Doom just says, "You may have immobilized my armor, but I still control my craft." Doom does not forget. "Not only will you rue the day that you cross me, but Zakan, your haircut looks like shit." And so at that point, he just teleports away. And Zakan's just like, I can't read his mind. And that's where Captain America tells him he teleported out of his armor, which is a dope move. Dr. Doom's done it before, right? He's teleported out of his suit into like a new battle armor that exists out there. But the funny thing is that he leaves behind a present, right? It's a scene from Total Recall. Get ready for a surprise, because the armor explodes. It self-destructs. And so in that moment, Captain America and Zakan are saved by Zakan's very powers. Otherwise, they would have both been incinerated. And so jumping back to Latveria, all hell's breaking loose, man. It's going sideways fast, because Scott Lang just says, "Cap, I'm losing your comm signal. Repeat, do you still have Doom?" And there's no response, right? Captain America's comm signal is basically out of commission at the moment. And so at that point, Scott Lang just says, "Cyclops, it sounds like Doom figured out what we're up to here, and the Latverian VFU is storming this place," right? And that's where Cyclops just says, like, "We're almost done." And so he's like trying to hack the computer, and he's like, "Oh, you know, it's like taking way too long." He's just like, "Fuck it," and blast the thing with this optic blast. At that point, you switch over to Scott Lang. He's like, blowing up Doom's data is one thing, but what are we going to do with the Doombot from beyond over here? And that's where this guy just says, "Why is everyone combative?" Query, is 3.29 the latest version of Doomware? Right? He doesn't really know who he is or what he's about. And that's where Cyclops initially teases the idea of handing him over to S.H.I.E.L.D., and a Doombot comes busting in, and it's just like, Doombots are property of Latveria by decree of Doom. And so Cyclops goes to attack this thing. Scott Lang knows exactly what's going to happen, right? He knows that this Doombot has no chance. And then he just tells Cyclops, "Save me the head." Cyclops pops off his optic beams and blows this guy's head smooth off of his shoulders. And so at that point, Scott Lang is like, "I've never got to examine one of these Doombot heads up close." And that's where he gets his hands on it. And then he asks the question, what's our way out of here that does not involve killing those Latverian stooges? And that's when you realize Emma Frost is here. Emma Frost, an exceedingly powerful telepath, literally has the guys start playing patty cake with each other. They start playing patty cake, which is kind of amazing, to be honest. I love that, right? And that's where she like addresses the Avengers, and she's like, "Look, man, you guys really need a psychic on your team." And this circumstance alone should be enough evidence to demonstrate if the Avengers really went toe-to-toe, pound for pound against the X-Men, yeah, man, the X-Men are gonna shit all over the Avengers, and then they'll be home in time for cornflakes. I promise you, man, that fight's not gonna go the way you think it is. I promise you, Avengers, that fight's not gonna go the way you think it is, man. You guys are gonna get wrecked in the worst way. And so not only that, it's not just Emma Frost, it's also 3-in-1. It's the Stepford Cuckoos, clones of Emma Frost from Emma's time during Weapons Plus. And so at that point, there is a little banter between Emma and like this quote-unquote new life form, where it's like, put on some clothes, and then he finds a cloak that belonged to a Doombot, and he puts a cloak on, he's like, you know, I've got clothes now, that kind of thing. But it's not a great big huge moment here. What does matter is that you switch over to Captain America being confronted by Agent Adsit. Now, one of the things to know is that this story, A+X, which is technically issues 17 and 18 that we're covering here, although it goes all the way back to like 13, 14, 15, and 16. What's important here is that this all takes place after both Secret Invasion and Avengers vs. X-Men, which means technically Cyclops is still a wanted man. He's an international criminal. But not only that, because Secret Invasion had happened, Skrulls are considered to be a credible threat. Hence the reason why this story opened up at Sagittarian Farm, because, and I'm not even lying here, because what ended up happening is that Reed Richards had discovered that because Skrulls were public enemy number one, no matter where they went, they would be hunted. And while not all Skrulls are good guys, Cadre K are, but they would not be given the benefit of the doubt by authorities. And so some of the Skrulls were transformed into bovine. They were turned into cows. And the Skrulls that were here were taking care of the cows. I told you guys, man, it goes off the rails, right? It gets kind of crazy. Jerry Dugan, man, sometimes I feel like he just starts writing a comic sober and then just becomes progressively intoxicated as he writes it, to the point that you end up with something like this. I love Jerry Dugan to death. His writing's phenomenal, but just sometimes, you know, like, it's one of those things. But Agent Adsit is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Initially, when Captain America had gone to vouch for Zakan, when Agent Adsit had shown up on the scene after Dr. Doom had teleported away, the Captain America was like, no, this guy is a good guy. And of course, Agent Adsit was like, Captain America standing up for a Skrull? Captain America's a Skrull, and like went to attack him, right? Steve Rogers takes him out pretty quickly. I mean, you're literally talking about a man who's half bald and has probably never been on a date. So this guy was clearly overtaken very quickly. But Captain America just says, Cadre K came here to live a quiet life, and tonight, when the chips were down, they volunteered to serve their country. So I'm willing to stand beside them all the way until they take the oath to become U.S. citizens. And then, of course, at that point, Cyclops, arriving here, just says, and I'd be willing to vouch for them too, but I don't want to hurt their chances with the US government. Because let me tell you something, man, at this point in Marvel Comics, if Cyclops comes to vouch for you, then it probably means that you're a bad guy. And even if you're not a bad guy, it means the government is not going, they're going to use that against you. They're going to be like, okay, so in hearing all the evidence and the fact that Cyclops is on your side, your ass is going to jail for life, right? And those bars get slammed home, and that is the story of you. And so Captain America just says, Cyclops, I was beginning to think that you skipped out on me again. And so even Agent Adsit just says, look, man, we flew all the way out here. Somebody's getting arrested. Someone is going into custody, and it could be Cyclops. And at that point, Cyclops is like, I'd rather you didn't. And even if you wanted to, there's no way that you actually could. And so in turn, Steve Rogers just like, everybody needs to relax and chill, right? Adsit, give us a couple of moments. And they kind of go standing over there. And so when Adsit, realizing that there really isn't a whole lot that's going to go down here outside of the new life form that they have basically captured that needs to be brought into some kind of custody, Adsit ends up taking off, which kind of brings things down to Captain America and Cyclops. Again, a bit of a fallout between Avengers versus X-Men, because one of the things that goes on here is that Captain America presents Cyclops with a card belonging to a district attorney that will basically help Cadre K and those guys essentially apply for citizenship and become legitimate US citizens. But then that leads to Eva Bell, also known as Tempest, a mutant who can control time, literally freezing time around them. And then Doctor Strange shows up here. I told you guys, man, it gets nuts. And where he's moving around, she's like, what in the heck? Because initially she freezes time, hoping that it can basically just give Cyclops an out, right? That she can like take Cyclops or talk to him, Cyclops and her can walk away, and when everything snaps back to normal, Captain America's just standing there and Cyclops is gone. So as far as Steve Rogers is concerned, Cyclops would have just teleported out, is how it would have looked, right? But Doctor Strange showing up here is kind of a cool thing, because in that moment, she asked the question, right, can you stop time too? And he's like, no, right? I don't know. No one stops time, Eva Bell. You slow time down to an almost non-existent crawl. And in fact, he even says, it would take Captain America 100 years to simply take a single step. That's how much you've slowed down time. And in fact, you're able to manipulate time on a level that I have never seen before. It's impressive. So effectively, she's kind of becoming his protege to a degree, that he basically convinces her, you got to set things back to rights, right? But I'm kind of here in order to get everything sorted out. Because what ends up happening is that when everything's set back to normal and Cyclops realizes Doctor Strange is there, Cyclops and Captain America start arguing with each other, because that's what they do now. And it's not even one of these serious arguments, right? It's just like Doctor Strange and Eva Bell watching it, and they're just like, do you want to get out of here? It's like, yeah, let's leave. So like, almost like a cartoonish situation. As they're walking away, Captain America and Cyclops are just screaming at each other. But this kind of wraps up by allowing Cadre K to essentially move on to go and find some measure of citizenship, kind of live a life among themselves. The cows are all mutating and everything, and it looks really, really creepy, but still. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.